Hello and welcome to the Vocal Sound Healing Podcast, episode 4, Finding Your Authentic Sound with Vocal Toning. My name is Alexandra Rigazzi-Tarling. I am a vocal sound healing practitioner and trainer, and I'm a vocal coach and technician, and I've worked with voice for well over 25 years as a former opera singer, and I have been training vocal sound healers for about the last 10 years. And I've developed this podcast to bring all things vocal sound healing, healing voice and voice to you for discussion. And so today we're going to be looking at finding and really exploring our authentic sound with vocal toning. And first of all, we need to look at what our authentic sound is. And in the context of vocal sound healing, we're looking at our voice as a vibrational tool. But this can work across the board. So if you're not a vocal sound healer, but perhaps you're a performer, a professional voice user, this can still apply to you. It's just how we look at the voice. It's how we approach our authentic sound. And what even is our authentic sound? So looking at the voice vibrationally, we're looking at the sound that we came in with. So really our natural born sound. And what even was that? Most of us probably can't remember. We can remember perhaps crying or laughing as a child, but what did that sound like? What did that feel like? And when we talk about our authentic sound in the context of vocal sound healing, we're really talking about our preconditioned sound. So this is a sound free from genre, really before speaking. So that sound that we made, that raw frequency sound that we made before we learnt to speak, before we learnt the accent of our caregivers, before the perfection set in, before the perfection of communicating, whatever that might be, even if that was just learning to speak a language and ask for what you want and get by in society. So with the authentic voice, we're really looking at that sound that you made when you first came into the world, the cry that you would have made for food, for love, because you were tired. Each cry would have had a different sound, a different frequency to it. And your caregivers probably would have known the difference. We're looking back to that sound where you gurgled, where you cooed, where you hummed as a baby. That raw sound, that gentle, raw frequency of you. And when you started to realise as a baby that you had a sound or a voice, you would have started to send this out into the space to test it and see what the response was. So you might have shouted or cried or sent out a louder sound just to see what happened, to see if somebody came to see you, to see if somebody smiled, to see what happened. So your voice was really your personal navigation tool. You sent that sound out into the world. Before you could walk, before you could even crawl, you were sending your voice out in the world to see what came back. So I'd like you to really bear that in mind as we go through this podcast. What you sent out, what sound, what frequency you sent out as a baby, and what response you received. What happened? What did your caregivers do? And in many cases, when babies and children cry, when they shout, when they're normally told to shh, it's okay, shh. So straight away, when we start to use this raw expressive sound, this raw expressive frequency, even if it is loud because we're just testing the water, we're often told shh, and it's usually coming from a good place. It's not coming from a place of bad intention. It's coming just to soothe the child or to calm the child, or perhaps the noise isn't appropriate at that time for whatever reason, and we gradually learn not to make so much sound. Now, naturally, of course, we all have to fit into society and work together, and there need to be, some boundaries in place. But I just want you to be mindful of that closing down, of that shutting down. So our authentic voice is really coming from that place of innocence, that place of being a loving being, that innocent loving being that we were born as, and sounding from that place, and then receiving the response of that sounding. And thinking as well now about your authentic voice as a voice that is free from performance, free from character, free from someone who you think you should be and someone who you think you should sound like. Whatever your job is, whatever your place in society, in your family, whatever that is, the authentic sound is free from that conditioning as well. We're taking it all away. So it's not about a sound that defines you in your roles within your life. It's deeper than that. It's your vibration. And many of us have moved away from that vibration because we've grown up, we've gone into school, we've learned to speak a certain way, learned to be a certain way, we've gone into our professional lives. And I can't tell you how many people I've worked with over the years that have had to put on a certain voice for their job, and that actually have come into problems because they're having to adopt a certain way of speaking, whether that's accent, whether that's pitch, and because of that, their actual voice has run into problems. So that's a slightly different thing, but it's just, again, something to bear in mind when we're thinking about what authentic voice is. And it might be that, there are different contexts for this, but certainly in the world of vocal sound healing, we're coming back to a place of who we are underneath it all. And how can we find that sound again, that sound of us underneath everything else, wherever you are in your world right now? Because we understand in vocal sound healing that when we use the voice as a vibrational tool for our body with positive intention, that we move energy. If you think about your body as being made up of millions and millions of particles and atoms, you are matter. You are matter. We know that. Science tells us that. So you are already a vibrational being, because if you're made up of all these particles and atoms, these particles and atoms are vibrating. So you might appear solid, but actually, at some fundamental level, you're vibrating. You are energy. So I'll just let that land. You are energy. So what then is your voice? And, even if you want to leave that for a moment, that question, that big question, what is therefore voice? Know that your voice provides a vibration within you when you sound. So your voice is able to move your energy. And, we have so much research on the voice, stimulating the vagus nerve, improving vagal tone. We released the endorphins, the oxytocin. See episode 3 of this podcast for that information. So we know all of that. But what else is happening? This internal sonic massage at a cellular level, at a particle level. We're moving energy with our voice. So if we're looking to refine or even just find our authentic voice, our authentic sound, we're coming back to who we are on that energetic level. Who we really are, without the masks, without the roles, without, all of the things we do, without the constructs. We're coming back to a much deeper level. And when we use our voice to sound with healing intention, we are able to move energy within us. And when we start to change our inner world, we start to see shifts on the outside. So let's just have a look at what vocal toning is, because I've said for this podcast that we're going to be looking at finding the authentic voice with vocal toning. So first of all, let's just look at what vocal toning is in case you're new to all of this and you're thinking, what on earth is that? Vocal toning. So vocal toning is when we make a sound, usually a hum or simple vowel sounds. We connect to gentle belly breathing and we elongate this sound. So it might be or so they're just simple sounds. And we might have a practice of vocal toning for health and well-being. Again, have a look at the previous episode. It might be that we're vocal toning to work with others in a healing context. So I briefly talked about in episode 1. There's more to come on this. How certainly in the vocal sound healing that I trained in, we use the voice over somebody's body to move energy and so on. But vocal toning, in essence, is an elongated sound, a hum, simple vowel sounds. There are no words. We're definitely connecting to a longer breath, but that will vary from person to person depending on health and breath length and so on. So starting from that place of a hum, because if you're new to vocal toning, you may well get confused between the idea of vocal toning in a vibrational sense, so where we're just looking at the voice as an expression of frequency. You may get that confused with singing. So when we talk about vocal toning, we're talking about pure tone, pure frequency, simple vowel sounds, simple hums. We're not talking about singing for performance, sounding really good, sounding better than somebody else, sounding louder than somebody else, sounding like your favourite singer on the radio, whatever. We're not talking about that. We're talking about breathing. Ooh, a simple sound. So it's not for performance, it's not for competition. If you do this, in perhaps a vocal toning class or a yoga class, it's not about who can sound the loudest, who can make their body vibrate the most with the loudest sound. Not about that. It's about breathing, sounding, almost bypassing that conscious thought, breathing, oh, what note should I sound? How should I sound? It's not about that. And, it's not about trying to create a sound that you think you should make. It's actually more about exploring what sound comes when you take away all of those thoughts, all of that conditioning. And what we want to do when we start this simple practice, perhaps we set aside 5 minutes a day to do some humming. And you might just take yourself away, focus on your breath and do 5 minutes of humming. And what we want to do is we want to start to observe the thoughts that come up around that. So, if you're new to vocal toning, or even if you're not new to vocal toning, are you being critical of your sound? As you're sounding, are you listening to it? What's your brain telling you? Are you feeling okay with that? Are you feeling like it's a stupid thing to do or it's a waste of time? What's going on? So as soon as you start to sound, what's going on in the inner world? What's brain saying? How's body feeling? What's going on in the throat? Observe. Have a little look at your inner landscape. What is going on with you? It's about bringing the vibration in and observing that. Noticing truly what is going on with you. Because we can't get to a place of authenticity with all of this stuff flying around all over the place, conditioning, what people think, what people say, what we think we should do, and all of the rest of it. we have to start to look at ourselves in a way where we can see what's really going on. And there is nothing like vocalizing, vocal toning. I'm going to say singing. I'm going to say singing in this context here because when I work with people and their voice, people say, oh, it's no good, I can't do this, it sounds weak, it doesn't sound like this. We're so critical of our sound. Yet our sound is this huge part of who we are. And I think I said it in an earlier podcast. If you woke up tomorrow and you could not sound, you lost your voice completely, indefinitely, that's a whole big chunk of you gone, isn't it? It's a whole big part of you gone. Yet, if someone asked you to stand up and do a bit of vocal toning, it'd be like, oh, God, no, oh, I can't sing, oh, I might get it wrong, oh, what's that? We're not even looking at that. There's no right or wrong with this. You're just breathing and humming. No one wrote the book on that. No one makes millions of pounds on that. It's just humming. It's just you and your sound. So what comes up when you do that? And it might be that, you have to sort of give yourself a little chat and say, okay, well, look, I'm going to give this a go, because that Alexandra woman was harping on about it in her podcast. And it might be that you have to tell yourself, I'm here for the well-being benefits of this. I'm here for the vagal toning. I'm here for the deep breathing. I'm here to relax myself. I'm here to take 5 minutes out of my busy schedule. Fine. If that's what gets you there, that's what you do. And then notice. And, the other thing that happens when we start to quieten ourselves and perhaps, shift conscious awareness perhaps into more of an alpha state, a daydreaming state, for example, which we know that vocal toning can put us into a flow state, shifts our perception whilst we're doing it. It might be that your brain fills with a million other things for you to do when you're in that state. Might be that you just cannot switch it off. Now, the good thing about vocal toning is that you are consciously, actively doing something. So it usually helps people that find meditation difficult and triggering, because you're doing something and you don't have to have your eyes closed. You can have your eyes open, it's fine. So if your mind fills with a million things for you to do when you do this, let that happen. Practice it more. Let your mind process. That is processing. All of the stuff that you've ever seen, felt, heard has to be processed. So if when you start your vocal toning, you're thinking, oh, am I being critical? Do I like the sound? Do I not like the sound? What am I thinking about this? And then, a million other things pop in. Stick with it. Just let it happen. Observe that. That's you being authentic. You're sounding and your mind fills with a bunch of stuff and you immediately criticize yourself for it. How about we then say, oh, okay, there's a little bit of critical voice came up there. Let's just put that on the shelf and let's stay with it. And let's see, mine might be very, very active the first 10 times that you do this. Note it, observe it, see how you go. And the more you work with vocal toning, what we're aiming to do is get to a place where you breathe and you sound without any thought of the pitch that's going to come, without worrying about whether it sounds loud, quiet, in tune, out of tune. It can't sound in tune, out of tune if you're just breathing and humming, because you're not tuning it to anything. You're just sounding. We want to get to a place where we can rock up for 5-10 minutes or longer as you get into this work and just sit with the sound of you. Sit with the sound of your voice. That's it. And as you start to sit with that sound, there are other things we can do. We start to direct the sound around the body. We can start to work with healing intention. There's all of that. But the most important thing for any vocal sound healer And for anyone that is really interested in working through the layers of who they really are and what triggers them and what just makes you tick or not, is sitting with that sound. And of course, when you're doing this, you're getting all of the breathing effects, you're getting the cellular massage, you're moving your energy, there's all these things. If you're already working with vocal toning and vocal sound healing, set a healing intention for yourself. You know, pick something off the top of the list. Maybe you need to get a better night's sleep. Maybe you need a bit of clarity over something. Set an intention for that and see what happens. You've got nothing to lose. But the most important thing with this authentic sounding is that you're vocalizing without adjusting, without listening to what you're doing. You're just sounding. And once you're comfortable with that, you can start to think about, where's my tongue? It's hanging out while I'm doing this. Is it gently forward in the mouth? What's my jaw doing? Am I actually opening my mouth to sound? Obviously, when you're humming, the lips are closed, but the back teeth might be gently apart to allow some resonance. Am I pushing the sound? Am I driving the sound? What does my throat feel like afterwards? Explore. See what's going on. And that part, just going back to the voice, that is the reset. That is where we're just exploring and sending everything else away. We're getting back to the core. And what I do want to just touch on is, if you're already a professional voice user, how this might work for you. Because, you know, a lot of professional voice users come back to really simplified vocal toning, breath and sound. Often it seems like it's too simple. It's too simple an exercise. How can that possibly work? How can that possibly bring me back to my authentic sound? Well, as I've gone through there, it's more than just the sound. You're really observing yourself as you sound. And that might be something to think about. If you're a professional voice user and you come back to vocal toning, you're sitting there thinking, this is ridiculous, it's too simple, how can this ever work? There's something to observe. There is something to observe. And the trouble for professional voice users is coming out of genre. So, you know, if you're an opera singer, it's how do I tone and not sound like an opera singer? If you're a musical theatre singer, how do you vocal tone and not sound like that's what you do? How can we come out of genre? Use our voice of the genre of ourself. You know, Alexandra's genre for today. And the reason I talk about the professional voice user pathway is because I'm sure, as I said, some of you know, and I talked about it at the very beginning of the podcast in the introduction, I trained as a professional opera singer, and I trained for about 7 years at a very well-known conservatoire in London. I went off to Zurich Opera House after that for a year, and then I lived out in Italy. I did audition tours in Germany. I gave concerts on cruise ships around the world, in various countries throughout Europe. I've, you know, performed in many, many places. And so I feel like I can call myself a professional voice user. That's how I earned my living for a good portion of my life. And I never felt fully at home in my sound once I started to train to be a professional voice user. I went off to music college when I was 17, and I turned 18 in my first year, so I was really young. And that for me was the beginning of moving away from my natural self. Before I went and did that training, I was fully in tune with my voice, myself, and how that felt. And being, you know, the sensitive being that I am, which enables me to do the work I do today, I was highly affected by the sense of perfection, criticism, judgment. I was a natural performer and I loved it. I still look back at those years with great fondness, even though there were some very fearful times, living in a lot of fear through training, fear of not being perfect, fear of not getting it right, fear of it going wrong. And also fear of where my voice would go, because I was sort of started life as a mezzo-soprano. I went to a teacher and went up to soprano, then I went back to mezzo-soprano, then back to soprano. Every teacher I went to, everyone I went to had their say in what they thought my voice was and what it should be. And after a while, I lost all sense of what I felt about my voice, what I felt about my sound, where I felt my sound should go. And when I actually finished my training, when I finished in Zurich, I moved to Italy to get away from it all for a while. And it was there that I actually stopped working with all the teachers I had been working with and went back to my own work and my own sounding, and then retrained my voice into mezzo-soprano and really started to get in touch with who I was and how that came out in the voice. Now, this is still before I started working with vocal sound healing. But the reason I mention it is because looking back at that time where I had no idea, at least I thought I had no idea, where my natural, authentic voice sat, I actually did, but I put my trust in everybody else. I put my trust in all the teachers that I thought knew what was right for me. And ultimately, it wasn't until I took myself away to a place where I was happy and could relax, free from all of that judgment, free from the perfection, free from the performance. I love Italy. I've always loved it. I always felt very at home there. And I took myself back to the drawing board, just me. I started to find where my voice wanted to sit. And that led me then ultimately to find vocal sound healing. It's quite a long story in between, which I won't go into now, but just to say that I had moved away from that natural, fun, loving sounding part of myself. And as I continued to work in the opera world, I got more and more into that fear. Even though I was working with closer now to the sound that I knew was right for me, I was still in all of that murkiness of it all. And I started to get unwell. Every time I had something really important to sing, an important concert, an important audition, I got ill. And that was my body telling me that it wasn't happy. And finally, I ended up moving back to the UK, and I remember it really clearly. I was working for a small opera company. It was only a few performances, and I got ill, lost my voice. And I remember the producer, director lady sort of shouting at me down at the phone, telling me to go and get steroid injections so I could sing that night for the show. And I just thought, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing it. I don't even know who I am anymore. So I stopped everything. I stopped vocal performing. I stopped vocal teaching, everything. I went back to reset. And I found vocal sound healing. I was introduced to vocal toning and this idea of pure vocal tone, this sort of authentic sounding as we're discussing here today. And through my training, I practiced this on myself. I practiced this on others through the training. And the more I worked with vocal toning, the more I worked with this pure tone, this breath and sound, I started to find myself again. I started to find joy in sounding. I started to move away from my critical self. I started to move away from genre, and I started to find a voice that functioned really well. It didn't have any problems, didn't have any tightness or tensions and need hours and hours of warming up. Actually, it just flowed. And what I saw is that the more I worked with this inner world through voice vibration, through this authentic sound, and as we've said, the voice literally moves energy within us. And of course, that was a new concept for me. I have always been brought up in a world of complementary therapies. My mother is a healer. I'd been brought up in that, but I'd moved away from it. And when I started to use my voice in this way, my inner world shifted and my outer world started to change dramatically. It was like a realignment. I got divorced, I moved back to the UK, I started working back in the healing arts, so with my voice, but in healing. It took me in all sorts of directions. I met my current partner of now 15 years, and it went from there. It went from there. And it all came back to following my guidance, going within and using that vocal toning, that vibration, without the criticism, without the judgment, without the performance, without trying to be better than anybody else, just focusing that voice for me. And it changed my pathway. I would say in a year, I looked back at my life and I was on a completely different trajectory. Literally, everything crumbled down and rebuilt itself. And just to say there as well, because I was an actress, I was an opera singer, I was very good at vocal impressions, imitating voice, all of that came very naturally to me. So even with the vocal toning, I had to be careful I wasn't imitating me doing the vocal toning, if that makes sense. How did I know that that vocal toning was truly my authentic sound? And a lot of times it wasn't. It was coming from a place of trying to be the person that was vocal toning. And then I had to just keep observing more and more subtle things about myself and letting them go and stepping into that fullness and that trueness of the authentic sound. And I'm not saying even now that I'm fully there. I don't claim to be, my authentic sound, but it feels way more authentic than it ever did. I can rely on my voice. I can use my voice across genre, and I teach obviously everything from opera, musical theatre, contemporary. I work with all of those styles, and voice just pops into those styles. So it's always me doing the singing and the sounding, but we start to look at genre as a filter. So for professional voice users, I would encourage you to look at what is your authentic voice? What does it sound like? Where is it? How does it feel? You might already have it, but if you don't, go back to you. And when you come back to you and that natural voice production, you can put any genre on top of that. And I would say, it's a little bit like working with the middle voice as a voice artist. That middle voice is what you came in with. It's that you wake up and you just, it's your voice. It's that middle voice that you would just hum with. And then from that, you've got, if you want to call it, chest voice, head voice. I prefer thick folds, thin folds, and so on. You're working first from your voice. That is your natural voice. Learn to get that voice smooth through the natural transitions of the sound, of the mechanism. And then you put on your filters depending on what you're doing. It's always got to come from you. The technique and everything else goes on top of that. We never ever lose you. So, whatever background you're coming from, either complete beginner, whether you're just looking to find your voice for healing, I say just, whether you're already a professional voice user, whether you're somewhere in the middle, starting with vocal toning, a simple hum, and it's really about the practice. We can't do any of this without committing to the practice. Well-being is a practice. Finding your authentic voice is a practice. Don't expect just to check in with it once a month. You need to be checking in with that humming, that simple vowel sounding on a nice gentle belly breath. You don't need loads of air. You don't need fill yourself up. You just need enough air that you're about to speak to somebody. But you're going to take that air by gently expanding into the torso. Sounding, hums, vowels and so on. And exploring and noticing what your thoughts are up to. Noticing whose voice is in your head. If it's a critical voice, is it your voice? Is it something you've been told? Do that work. Start to filter it all down. And make a practice of getting to know your voice as a tool for generating frequency. Take everything else away. It's a tool for generating frequency. And that frequency is for you. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be projected. It's not about that. And when you've done that, see what you find. So, folks, I hope you've got something to ponder upon there with your authentic voice, with vocal toning, and have a go and see how you find it. If you want to have an online group environment to practice, then you can join my Voice for Wellbeing and Meditation sessions on Monday morning or Friday evening. Have a look on the website, links are all there. You might want to join my holistic voice membership for 3 classes a week if you're really into this and want to just get into the whole practice of stripping it all back and working with your voice for healing. But, you know, at the end of the day, whatever you do, remember this is all about practice. It's all about dedication for yourself, for your own healing. It's about your own devotion to yourself. Because only you can change you. And you have all of those tools. You have your voice. You have the ability to sit quietly and just notice what's going on there and have a little sort through. And then see what happens. Your voice and your time is free for you. You don't need lots of expensive equipment. It's all there. You've got it. You've got your voice. You've got your breath. So have a little explore and see what happens. Right, folks. Well, I look forward to seeing you next week for episode 5. Have a wonderful weekend ahead and I'll see you soon. Take good care now.